Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine. Welcome to this series on form drawing. Today I'm going to share with you the book called Movement Drawing Workbook by Lee Sturgeon-Day. But I also want to share with you some of the other form drawing books that I'm sharing in this series. This is called Creative Form Drawing with Children age 6 to 10. This is Workbook 1. This is by Angela Lord. We also have Creative Form Drawing for the 4 Temperaments. I am so excited about this book and what it can offer students both in a classroom and a homeschool setting. This is for children ages 6 to 12, and this is Workbook number 3. We also have Creative Form Drawing for children aged 10 to 12, and this is Workbook 2. So if you're interested in any of these other workbooks, I highly encourage you to check out this complete series, and you can find the link to that series and the blog post in the description box below. Okay, so let's get started with Movement Drawing Workbook by Lee Sturgeon-Day. This one is specifically intended for adults, and I love the prompts that are given as you go through the book. And also something of note is that this book recommends the workbooks by Rudolph Kutzli, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that name wrong, Creative Form Drawing Workbooks 1, 2, and 3, which I'm very excited to get a hold of because this book seems like it's based on those 3 resources. So let's start with this book first. Now this one is intended for adults, and it's intended as movement drawing, which is the same as form drawing, but Lee does change it to movement, and I really love why she does that and how that can be so helpful for adults. So for adults, as we are now really deep into our own bodies versus children who are still kind of getting used to their bodies, we tend to be a little bit more rigid, and form drawing, really movement drawing, can be very helpful for us. And now the reason why I bought this book specifically is for one sentence here. It says, breathing out the knots of life. In life, we are either knotted with tension or strung out to the breaking point. And I said, yes, exactly. And this was the reason why I bought this book, because as an adult, we find that through life's stressors or through our own temperaments or through our own challenges, we tend to find either a lot of tension in our life or we are strung out. It really depends on your temperament as well, how you're going to internalize these stresses, and form drawing or movement drawing can really help with those stressors, just as other meditative processes can help you as well. Form drawing or movement drawing is one more of those types of meditative processes that can help you find harmony and balance. So this book has 3 golden rules of movement drawing, and for the sake of this book, I'm going to call it movement drawing. For the sake of the other books, I'll call it form drawing. Movement drawing, you can imagine more for the adults, and form drawing is typically what it's called in Waldorf schools. It's typically called form drawing, not movement drawing. But by the way, when you are doing form drawing, you're actually doing a lot of whole body movements as well. You're not just sitting at a desk with paper and pencil or crayon. You are actually moving those forms with your whole body, especially when children are younger. So the 3 golden rules of movement drawing are to keep breathing, which sounds a little silly to say because we're always breathing. However, when you are working so diligently on your form drawing or movement drawing, you can tend to hold your breath, and then that would defeat part of the purpose, because we do want this to be a meditative process, a dynamic process, a somewhat flexible process, because you're constantly moving, so you need to constantly be breathing. And this is definitely something for me personally that I really resonate with, because I tend to want to finish a form rather than spend the time within the form. And so when you're focused on the product versus the process, you can hold your breath or tense up because you are waiting for the finish. The next thing is to keep moving. This part is actually pretty easy for me personally, but I have seen it to be a struggle for others. So keep moving means that you want to continue your form Let me show you an example. You want to continue your form throughout the page. You don't want to stop mid-form. Even if you make a mistake at the beginning of the form, you want to complete the form. And there is some wisdom behind not going back and fixing your mistake, or being okay about completing your form or your movement, even though there may be a mistake at the beginning. This is part of life. We can't go back and change the past, but we can repair the past by a number of things. If we've hurt someone, we can ask for forgiveness, or we can repair a relationship, etc. And so there are ways to move forward from that, but we can't change the past. So with form drawing as well, when you are working on it, you might make a mistake, but here's what I've learned through my experience in working with form drawing, especially as an adult. And I should say that with children, there are some children who can be stumbled by their mistakes more so than other children. This is where form drawing for the temperaments can really be of help, because there are some temperaments who will be hasty with the form drawing. They just want to finish. They're not so worried about really being precise with their form. There are others who, once they make a mistake, that's it. The form is ruined. They want to start all over, or they want to erase it. So each temperament's going to work through mistakes differently. But as an adult, when we encounter a mistake, or we may not have started it correctly, go ahead and finish the form. What I've noticed is that, and I tend to work with, say, a stick crayon versus a pencil, but one of the materials that's advised in this book that you have when you're doing form drawing is a particular type of pencil. I believe it's a thicker pencil, that rather than a thinner pencil. So it's a thicker pencil. I prefer a soft lead over a hard lead, but that might be a preference. And then the author suggests a pad of newsprint. So this would be very flexible, thin paper. You want a lot of paper. You want to be able to go through this without worrying. You don't want to use your fancy paper for this, and you want a large sheet of paper. In this case, she suggests 12 inches by 18 inches. So see if you have larger paper than, say, print size paper, which is typically 11.5 by 8.5 by 11, 8.5 by 11 inches. So a larger, like say double the size, is brilliant. Then you have enough room. And if you even have larger, that would be better. And she even advises that if you have the possibility to have an entire wall that you can work on, maybe you make it an entire chalkboard wall, or it's another type of wall that you can have that space to write on, like say dry erase or something that's really large. That's even better. Now, what I've noticed is when I've worked on form drawing, and I do prefer a larger format when possible, that as you work through a form, you'll find that you might be slow in the beginning and fast at the end, or fast in the beginning and slow at the end, or more precise in the beginning than more sloppy at the end. But however you do it, the first time you go through, you can always go back through that same form and thicken the lines. And as you thicken the lines, you can correct some of those subtle mistakes. And so maybe your loop was really small for one and then larger for the other, but you can sort of enlarge that first loop and sort of make that second loop a little bit smaller so that you have more uniformity throughout your form. And so you want to go through it the first time, you want to keep moving, you don't want to erase or correct your mistakes. You can always go back and sort of soften those mistakes with working through the form once again. And then the last golden rule that Lee suggests is to keep your attention on the moving moment. So this part, I think, for me personally as an adult, seems to be the hardest, to really stay in the present. What she says is that we are training your attention and focus. We want to clear our minds. And what ends up happening for me personally is when I'm working on a meditative process that's creative, like drawing, painting, or form drawing, once you hone your focus on that particular form, you'll find that your mind starts to wander. Now, in some cases, I find this to be fabulous because so many wonderful creative ideas tend to fill my head when I'm in that kind of meditative process. But as we are beginning, we want to clear our mind from things that are distracting so that we can invite that kind of inspiration. So clear your mind from a conversation you had with a friend, or a shopping list, or something that's on your to-do, or something that's coming up next week, or a phone call that you realized that you needed to make. And that's going to happen often because as you start to draw your focus and bring your attention towards form drawing and you start to cross over into that meditative process, of course, all of these things are going to start to cloud your mind. So for me personally, again, the thing that's going to help me the best when I'm wanting to do something like this is to clear my mind first. So if it means to make that phone call, send that text message, create that shopping list, make a plan for next week, write my to-do list. If I need to do all of that first, because I know that that is going to complicate my process and that's going to be what ends up creating a hurdle before getting to that space of meditation and inspiration, that I'm going to do that first. The book begins with a verse for form drawers, and this is very common in a Waldorf setting. There will be a verse to start either the class, the main lesson, form drawing, any kind of activity. Verses are commonly used to begin or to end. Now, you may use this verse in particular that's been given, or you can create your own verse, your own words, or you can find inspiration from poetry or religious texts as well. Now, what's wonderful about this book is that it's going to take you through different practices, and for each one, there will be an opening to explain what we're looking to do and a whole process walking you through it. And I would love for this to be a guided process, but if it's not, then I encourage you to read through these so that you can guide yourself through the process. So for instance, this first one is on breathing out the knots of life. So the first thing that it advises is that you find a comfortable place and your paper and your pencil, and make sure that you're seated in a comfortable position so that you can begin your form drawing. It advises using a comfortable chair versus sitting like on your knees, like cross-legged, or in a position that may be uncomfortable moving forward. I like to stand as well as sit. So for me, both tend to be comfortable ways for me to draw. And by stand, I mean stand at like a standing side height desk. The next thing is to imagine yourself immersed in living currents of energy that pulsate from far distance and stream through and within our bodies. So in preparation for the form drawing, or the movement drawing rather, you want to just imagine the energy. And in this paragraph, in this page, it talks about the energy coming from without and drawing within and coming through to your fingers as you move through these forms. Then the whole process should be done quietly and slowly. And so for this, like what I would love is the meditative process of having someone guide you through this imagery, this meditative imagery, before you actually start on the form drawing. Having someone talk to you about the energy coming from without or within, or setting the stage and thinking about the night sky and the twinkling stars, or some other environment that can put you in this space for being prepared to do your movement drawing. Then it goes quiet. And then you bring your force, your willpower to doing the form. And this is a quiet process. It's rhythmic if possible. At first, it may seem awkward. At first, it may be difficult to do the forms, but I love how they start. It seems like it's going to be complicated, but I love how it starts with a simple form, just a line. And then that line undulates with the moving water. Imagine the water on the ocean and those gentle waves out in the ocean, not the ones that are crashing along the shore, but the ones that are out in the ocean, a gentle breeze bringing that water up and down slowly. And you can just sort of imagine it and move your arms to it. And then your whole body seems to have that breath of that undulating motion of the water. And then you can see that then when you draw this, you have this light peak here, soft peak, very, it's soft, it's not pointed. And you can see how you can move that form so that it has more shape. You can almost see that wave as though it was going to crash along the shore, but it doesn't quite. And you can see that you're bringing that wave back, you're bringing that form back, that movement back upon itself. And then you can see that forward motion and that back motion and that forward motion and that back motion. That ebb and flow is actually such a comfort. And then as you move through it, you can see that you actually have created this knot here, right in the center of this form drawing, as you've moved from straight to curved to knot. And then what's really beautiful is that you'll work out that knot until you come back to that straight, beautiful, almost perfectly straight line, but it does have a little bit of movement. Moving forward, you can see some variations on this technique, and you can have different forms of quote unquote knots as you're crossing back and forth, moving forward and back, and then you will want to unwind those as your final form. What's beautiful is that once you've done this one, you can start to master some of the other ones. This one has curves and angles, and then of course you have some variations on that, and then looping the loop, and then several more. This is a small workbook as far as size. It is softback, but it is packed with information and examples. And what I love so much is that the explanations for each of these forms is perfectly suited for adults. So I highly recommend this book. And if you get the chance to get some of the books that were recommended in this book by Rudolf Kutzli, the Creative Form Drawing books 1, 2, and 3, then I highly recommend that you get those if you really enjoyed this book. I hope this was a helpful look at these resources for form drawing. I hope you'll check out the blog post that accompanies this video, where you can find more resources, links to these books, as well as other tutorials. You can find the link to that blog post in the description box below. And if you'd like to see what we're form drawing on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.